Fast-moving object falls from the sky into the dry landscape of New Mexico. A frail male figure stumbles down a mountain, trying to gain his footing. It is not immediately clear to the audience that the male figure here is not of Earth origin, something the film chooses to reveal over time. The story of the interstellar traveller finding themselves on our dear planet Earth is a very familiar concept. It's a tale of old that comes from humanity's desire to answer the question of whether we are truly alone in the universe, and in the millions of years Earth has existed, if we have had a visitation. As a result, artists from all forms of media have attempted to throw around this idea. For many, these depictions often spell doom and gloom for the arrival of aliens, as spelling the destruction of our civilization. But that's not what fascinates me. A more engrossing concept to me is interpreting what it would feel like to be in an alien's footsteps. Obviously, being humans, we'll never really know, but artists have tried to interpret this while also handling concepts more relatable to Earth in regards to loneliness, defining beauty, and cultural differences. How would a creature not of Earth origin feel about our customs, our expansion as a race, our technological advancements, our bad habits that put the future of our planet on the line? In my opinion, only a few films have truly captured that feeling of, pardon the phrase, alienation. Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin obviously comes to mind, but another film which has become a defining feature of British art cinema, Nicholas Roeg's 1976 film, The Man Who Fell to Earth, containing the debut movie performance from British pop star David Bowie. In this video, I'm going to be exploring this rather underrated science fiction gem in how it not only is a tragic tale of 20th century consumerism, but also plays as a sort of biographical film for Bowie's life at that time. Now, I'm not saying David Bowie is actually Ziggy Stardust, and he's actually got a crew of spiders from Mars, but there is certainly something hauntingly biographical about this movie. So join me as I give appreciation for his second most iconic performance. Yeah, I have to admit, he's the Goblin King in more eyes than Thomas Newton, and how director Nicholas Roeg perfectly cast him as the man who fell to Earth. But before we finally answer Bowie's question as to if there is actually life on Mars, remember to shoot us a like, and if you're willing to turn and face the strange, a good old subscription to the channel. With the next few videos, I want to be really pushing the quality of this channel into new directions with more analytical videos than just traditional reviews. Obviously, I'll still make reviews on new releases because it's always important to stay in the know on the latest movies and shows blowing up. But I also want to move in directions where I can dissect films that really stick with me for extraordinary reasons, whether it be in the best ways or the worst. So look out for a complete transformation of this channel. I really appreciate all the support so far, and I can't wait to take you on further video odysseys. Receiving transmissions from Major Tom to start the review. So it should be said that if it wasn't for the leading star of David Bowie, this is a hard film to sell people on. It's essentially an art house film, through and through. Plenty of nudity. Okay, maybe that'll get people in. But you know, there's the obscure trippy imagery. Okay, that has an audience base, I suppose. And has David Bowie in a rather sensual gimpy suit. Okay, I have to say, I'm kind of selling it here, aren't I? Okay, well, it has a slow pace.
Gotcha, bitch!
Damn it, this is an absolute classic from the 70s. Is it a perfect film? No, definitely not. There are some glaring issues. Basing my video on the 138-minute director's cut, which was released for the Criterion Collection, I feel it could do with some trimming down to under 2 hours. There are some painfully slow moments in the later half of the film. Also, how a spaceship shaped like a hut driving on rails could fly you to space. Clearly us mortals have been going about space travel all wrong. And despite the film taking place over many years, why do the clothes and technology remain frozen in the 1970s fashion? But for a film that's trying to capture an alien living on Earth, it does it extraordinarily well. Based off the 1963 novel of the same name, the film follows the story closely of a man who fell to Earth. He has crash landed on Earth with the mission to save his planet from natural disaster, seeking a way to ship water to his home and save his beloved wife and children from starvation. Crafting the identity of Thomas Newton, he becomes a very successful entrepreneur who amasses an incredible amount of wealth from his inventions. However, being a foreign alien, he did not take into account the slippery desires of human vices and corruption. This is a story of an alien underestimating human nature and fighting against the clock to save his planet and family from oblivion. But hey, what do you know? Despite a grand intelligence, even an alien can be corrupted by the powers of consumerism. Maybe the alien is more human than he first thought. So yeah, it's not exactly a jolly tale, and there's certainly some things to say about the fragile state of people, the pointless excess of money, and how technology has in some ways stunted human progression. Damn, how would old mate Newton be doing in the 21st century, having to contend with the internet, mobile phones, and Netflix? For Newton, the television becomes the encyclopedia into history, science, maths, and the human soul, and he becomes fascinated with it to learn the tricks and trade of what it means to be human. But as he inundates himself with information, he slowly builds an obsession towards it.
The strange thing about television is that it doesn't tell you everything. It shows you everything about life on Earth. The true mysteries remain. Perhaps it's in the nature of television. Just waves in space.
It then becomes a resource to numb the social anxiety of interacting with people. I know it's a film from the 1970s, but I'm still going to say it. And slight spoilers going forward, so please skip to this timestamp. Okay, 3, 2, 1. It then extends further into this mental state, as he uses it as a way to distract from the pain of doctors opening him up with scalpels when his eventual alien nature is revealed. Trying to keep his alien origins a secret from people and thinking money will distract the world's finest scientists from discovering him only leads to further mystery and jealousy, which finally comes to a head when he's kidnapped by a rival company by the help of his chauffeur, and his business associates are murdered brutally, putting his company into financial collapse. So his eventual plan to save his species and planet is sadly put to an end. He accepts defeat and is held against his will as he becomes a prisoner of the humans, living a lifestyle very similar to the later years of Howard Hughes. To cope, he resorts to sex that he doesn't enjoy, consumes food on a mass scale, and relies on the good old vice of alcohol. It's a nice little film trick too that the alcohol of choice is gin, and aesthetically looks a lot like his nutritional drink of choice, water, the resource that he was trying to get from this planet to transport to his family. He's become a marvel of human experimentation and is trapped on Earth now. His wife and children pleading for his return and no way of reaching them. Later in the film, it's revealed that Newton has resorted to art to spend his time and give him purpose, creating a shortened music career for himself. He hopes that with this music he can communicate with his wife and children so it can reach the airwaves to his home planet. However, the tragedy of the situation is the music he makes is nonsensical to human ears and is seen as a commercial failure, just ending up in a bargain bin of all places.
Oh, didn't make it for you anyway.
What's fascinating rewatching this film is the overt connection it has to the main player of the film, Mr. David Bowie. Now most can agree, Bowie was a fantastic, iconic figure in music history, up there with the Elvises, the Beatles, Elton Johns, Metallica. But most can probably say he wasn't really an actor. But one performance that continually fascinates people is his role in The Man Who Fell to Earth. And I think it's because it comes from a very personal place. One could say David Bowie at this time in his life was meant to play Newton. Interestingly, director Nicholas Roeg had two other choices in mind to play Newton, one being British actor Peter O'Toole, who seems way too handsome to play a frail alien figure, and the other, strangely enough, filmmaker and writer Michael Crichton, due to his stature. Roeg was eventually convinced of Bowie after seeing him in documentary Cracked Actor, depicting Bowie in his cocaine addiction years. I think director Nicholas Roeg was clearly trying to get the best people to work with for his scripts, and was infamous for thinking outside the box and getting raw talent for his films. He famously went with Mick Jagger for his movie Performance, and followed this up with Art Garfunkel in Bad Timing. Back then, many would think relying on a musician to perform in a movie is a big no-no, but really it comes down to the director taking the chance and trusting someone, not in acting, to really embody their character through unconventional means and give a performance that really no one else could give. It's immediately clear that Bowie was born to play this character. Bowie, while incredibly handsome in the film, is quite angelic, pale white, fragile in frame. It gives an incredibly subdued performance. Granted, this may have more to do with the lack of experience acting in movies and being reportedly stoned from beginning to end than being a choice in method acting. But it still works perfectly for the film's impression of an alien creature. But at the heart of it, I think Nicholas Roeg saw something in 1973 Bowie that screamed out that he was born to play the man who fell to Earth. Bowie even admits that around the time of filming, he was undergoing a tough time in his rock star life, travelling through America for his Diamond Dogs album tour, which essentially was one big coke train. I was feeling as alienated as that character was. 10 grams of cocaine a day in me, stoned out of my mind from beginning to end. Especially interesting when I recently caught the documentary Moonage Daydream, which essentially clarifies Bowie going through a midlife crisis in his late 20s, trying to find purpose, and contending with a sense of isolation while being an incredibly wealthy and admired figure. The actress who played Mary Lou claimed that while she loved working with Bowie, and was reportedly impressed with how professional he was during the shooting, said that David wasn't a person who ever expressed what he was feeling. Outside of acting together, we never had dinner or spent any non-working time together. He was very removed and quiet. Bowie said he was very grateful for the experience. Before this film, he turned down so many roles, which were all exploiting his career as Ziggy Stardust. But Roeg was the first one to offer him a role where he could actually play his own fragile, quiet self. It was quite clear that Roeg wanted Bowie for this film. Hell, he even hired an entirely British crew to New Mexico to make him more comfortable, and chose to cast Bowie's actual driver, Tony Maskia, as Newton's chauffeur Arthur, and even inspired David to use stills from this film for his album covers Station to Station and Low. The film was planned to have even further connections to the star David Bowie, with Bowie himself reportedly producing a soundtrack for the film. However, due to creative and contractual issues between Roeg and the studio, it was actually never released. According to Bowie, it was also unfinished and was deemed unsuitable to the film's style, though apparently a lot of it did find itself on further albums. And the lost tapes of this album were released years later, after the passing of Bowie and the growing cult status of this film, which in my opinion it entirely deserves. Is it a rough film? Sure. The film could be snappy and it does lose some of its flow around the middle of the film, but having revisited this film for this analysis, I think there's a good reason for its appreciation in the British arts cinema circles as a haunting science fiction piece, and was a perfect film to welcome rock star David Bowie into the world of cinema. I am aware that there was a Showtime reboot starring Chittawal Ejiofor. Out of interest, actually, while making this, news came out that the show has actually been cancelled. Not to say that the show deserved it at all, I haven't actually seen it, but I thought that was an interesting little detail to add that does have a connection with the 1976 cult classic by continuing Newton's story. However, I find it more effective to think that Newton's story ended in tragedy. Cynical, I know, but I think the whole story of Newton is a tragedy. I suppose it's nice to think that, like David Bowie, Newton was able to pick himself out of the gutter and live a life of his own, inspiring future new generations to come to continue his good work. I really can't recommend this film enough, and an essential element to this is the fragile and surreal performance from the late David Bowie. And hey, one could even say it's a film that made it possible for musicians to be taken seriously as actors, leading to many fantastic performances. I'm thinking rapper Riz Ahmed in Sound of Metal and The Night Of, Tom Waits in Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Chris Christopherson in A Star Is Born, Megan Thee Stallion in No, I'm not going there. Anyway, go and watch it. If nothing else, put on a bit of Bowie. I would be curious to hear what your thoughts are on this film, and what you think is the best era of Bowie. Hands down, it's 80s Bowie for me. Can't go wrong with a bit of Ashes to Ashes. And if you appreciate Bowie, go and check out the new documentary, Moonage Daydream. It's a visually stunning tribute to an important pop artist. Rest in peace, Starman.